Today at Lorenzo's Fast Flow, No Nonsense's 396 and 289 engine blocks are ready for assembly. To begin the process, Kevin balances the crankshaft. Next is the cam bearings, core plugs, and crankshaft. Each bearing is marked to indicate where it lays in the block. A small hole in the cam bearing lines up with the hole in the crank saddle for oil to pass through. Core plugs are used to fill the sand casting core holes found on the engine. These holes allowed for the removal of sand during the casting process and generally serve no purpose after the fact. After installing the camshaft and the crankshaft, the main caps get prepped for installation.
But this back area has this blue seal. And the seal rides back here. So the seal is going to, that's where it seals the crankshaft from oil leaking out.
Each bolt for the main caps gets dressed with a little bit of lubricant to ensure ease and seamlessness when going into the block. They get a quick tighten with an impact gun and are then torqued to a specific weight. Manufacturer specs indicate what foot-pounds to go to. For this, it's 100 foot-pounds. Next is the timing chain. Each gear has a series of dimples to align for proper timing in relation to the camshaft and crankshaft. Moving on from there, the piston ring gaps get measured. Because of expansion, the feeler gauge is used to measure the ring gap. If the gap is too small, the ring filer is used to widen the gap.
Really doing is just making a chamfer on the edge.
Once Kevin finds the proper size for the rings, the process is repeated for the other ones. From there, the piston gets assembled. There are 2 compression rings and an oil control ring.
When you get new rods, they torque these bolts back down, so you have to untorque them, which is a pain. Just oil. And cool. Just putting oil in there. The plastic bag is just so it doesn't get all over my hands. And that's it.
A piston compression ring, set to the bore of the cylinder, is used to funnel and compact the rings so they slide into the bore perfectly. Kevin measures how much the piston sticks out of the bore. This is called the piston deck spec. That's how far the piston travels in the cylinder.
All I'm checking is how far the piston comes up in the cylinder.
If it's below the deck, there will be less compression. If it's right at 0, you're in a good spot. And if it's over, you could hit the cylinder head.
That's my 0.
After the gaskets are on, the oil pan gets locked in. Turning over, we're now onto the cylinder heads. A similar process to the caps. Each bolt is dressed, tightened with the impact gun, and then clamped specifically with the torque wrench. One unique thing about these heads is that one of them wasn't drilled and tapped. Pretty unusual.
Soaking the lifters in oil.
The rods then go in and are met up at the top with the rocker arms. Since we are using hydraulic lifters, they go to 0 lash, and then they go half a turn tighter.
This is just a simple compression test. That's that.
Next door, the intake manifold is getting prepped. It gets cleaned with a solvent to remove old sealant and other grime. From there, it goes into the hot tank, and it comes out sopping wet but looking brand new. Back to Kevin. The sealant and gaskets and head covers are installed. Back at the machine shop, Marco is working on the 289 valves.
I don't know if you can see that, but you'll see the 30 degree down here and then the 45 up top. And the back cut means a lot. If you put the head on a flow bench with just a straight 45 compared to with back cuts, it means a huge difference. The 30 degrees are usually done with the lower lift cams. You'll see it on the flow bench. If you have like a 700 lift cam and you're putting a 30 degree back cut on it, you'll see the low lift numbers suffer. With the 700 lift cam, you normally put a steeper back cut on it. Depends on the lift. That's why I don't want to tell you 32, 34, 36, 38.
Gotcha.
But the real low lift cams, you want to put a low, a 30-degree angle on it, because it picks up down low, and that's where it's at, down low, because they only have like 480 to 500 lift. So you don't want to kill the low numbers when you don't have that much, numbers to go up. There's always a compromise. You know what I mean? Either you're taking the low lift numbers away, or you're taking the high lift numbers away. And in a race car with a big cam, you usually have a stall speed in it anyway, and you're bringing the RPMs up, and you're trying to use it, at the maximum of the cam. And the low ones, you have hardly any torque converter. There's not there. It's not there, so you need all that low lift.
Gotcha.
Here he's checking the open and close pressure and the valve spring pressure check.
Pretty.
Once the valves are in the heads, the stem seal goes in first, and then the spring goes over the valve, and finally, the locks go in to keep everything locked. From there, the heads go to the assembly room and get put together in the same exact way as the 396. The rocker arms were a little dirty, so we glass beaded them. After a few additions, these engines are off to the dyno. And now, Lorenzo answers your questions. What is the valve guide clearance on the 289 cylinder heads?
We use newer valves that have chrome stems, and we make them 1.5 thousandths clearance.
Always wondered, why 30 over? I guess it is determined by what's left of the cylinder?
30 over is a standard oversize. They have 20 over, but if 20 over doesn't clean it up, then we go 30 over. I determine that in the boring bar. I always bore the worst one first, and I see what that cleans up at. The cylinder was already too far gone to clean it completely up at 20. So then I went to 30 over and I did them all at 30.
Because you are boring it out, does that make the capacity bigger? Will it still be 289 or slightly bigger?
After you bore at 30 over, it's basically between 5 and 6 cubic inches larger in displacement.
For NoNonsenseNoHow's 396, looks like semi-closed chamber L34, L35? This engine should make some good power. What cam are you going with? Shall we make bets on what this is going to make before it hits the dyno?
I'm going with a cam in the 242, 248 range at 50. It's made by Comp Cams. And they're 215 castings, closed chamber, iron oval ports. We can definitely have a little competition on who guesses the closest horsepower to what this motor makes. I'm gonna keep my opinion to myself, but you guys can all guess, and whoever gets the closest to the horsepower number, we'll give a free shirt to.
For your chance to win a free t-shirt, like, subscribe, and comment below how much horsepower you think NoNonsenseNoHow's 396 will make on the dyno. Be sure to watch our previous videos to help with your guess. More info in the description below.